Morning, everybody. Thank you, Rob and Ron and Meyers Roman. I appreciate it. My name is Mark Abood. I'm with Hanna Commercial Real Estate. I'm an attorney licensed in Ohio and in Pennsylvania. I'm a real estate salesperson licensed in Ohio and Connecticut. Don't ask me why, but we could talk about that later. Little bit of I'm not an auctioneer. I do oftentimes discuss auction law and auction strategy. So please, anything is fair game. Ask questions, interrupt me, take phone calls. Anybody who's heard me speak, we're all here to make money, and I don't want to stop you from doing that. So don't hesitate. Types of auction. Well, first of all, has anybody attended an auction of any type? Tell me. Real estate. I would imagine. I may walk around a little. I'm going to drive the cameraman crazy here. But real quickly, type of auction. Real estate, or has it been art? Examples.
Real estate.
Real estate. Did you represent a party, or were you just observing?
Represented a lender.
Lender? Yeah. So did you credit bid, or were you buying? Or?
I was just observing. There was someone else doing that activity.
Okay.
Didn't credit bid.
Live auction?
It was live.
Was there any other elements to it? Okay. So was it a court sale then?
It was.
Good. Okay. What other type? Who else? Yeah. Jack.
I've been to bankruptcy court auction. Sold the general unsecured assets of a company, and I've been to a lot of your auctions.
And others, I hope. Fun to attend. So that's a theme. Fun to attend. Why is it fun? Active. I mean, you've seen some bidders. Okay. Passionate. Who else? Yep.
Receivership option.
Oh. Conducted. So you were the receiver, and you were appointed then by the court to actually market and conduct the sale of real estate and other assets. Yep. So that's a great comment that we may get into a little bit later as well. Ohio Ohio permits under 2329-151 not only receivers are always permitted to conduct sales, but not only that, but a private company can market and stand in the shoe, market and conduct a sheriff's sale, or stand in the shoe. Federal court? Okay. So Ohio law permits private companies to, I'm not going to do any, we could just, I don't have any PowerPoint. A private company can be appointed by the court in Ohio to market and conduct a sheriff's sale. So that allows for a lot of creative strategies when it comes to the disposition of assets. It gives a lot more flexibility, doesn't tie the asset to the court schedule. It allows it to maybe move quicker and more efficiently. Who else? Anybody else have any thoughts on auction? Yep, you attended?
Yeah, it was
Art. And so it was a residence.
No, it wasn't a residence. I worked for an auction house.
Okay, contents.
Yes.
People show up at the property?
No, they had a site that they would
Oh, okay,
hold auctions at.
very good. And so that's another live environment, it sounds like?
Yes.
Do you ever take bidding then online, or?
It was over the phone bidding.
Over the phone bidding. Can be just as passionate, I'm sure, huh?
It's a little strange, I guess, with the over the phone bidders. It's just, you can't see them, you don't know what you don't get a body language from.
Body language critical. I think there are some auctioneers in the house as well, and I know my partner Mike can tell you a lot about how much you can tell from someone's body language and from actually physically seeing and reading the bidders in the audience, how important of a component that is.
That's why live auctions are so great, because of the transparency. Bidders can see the other bidders bidding against them.
Yep. To Mike's comment, transparency, how important it is from a bidder's standpoint to know that who you're bidding against is actually a bidder and someone who has met the qualifications to bid by bringing certified check or signing the purchase agreement, or actually walking out with the art or personal property as well. Important to the sellers to know that the bidders that are there physically are people who can and have met the requirements to close. So transparency is a significant component of an auction or a successful auction strategy, at least in my opinion. Yep.
I've been to 2 auctions. One was an Amish auction, which was interesting. Produce, livestock,
Horses and
horses.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't been to one.
Of course, I've been to our auctions. And then I was involved in an auctions.com auction, which I was shocked at the lack of transparency. Actually, I found out there's only one bidder, and he had put an offer in previously, and they said, we're going to hold off those goes to auction.com, but they gave the illusion that there were all these people bidding. It's kind of like eBay, except a little less transparent.
So what Bill is mentioning is that there's other types of auction strategy, not necessarily being a live auction environment, but there are other ways to sell property and sell assets. Your experience wasn't as good with the eBay style, auction.com style of auction, although it is a strategy, and as we know, a strategy that a lot of people do utilize over the years. Ohio recognizes 2 types of auction a format or auction process. Ohio auction is governed under 4707 of the Ohio Revised Code. On one end of the spectrum, you have what's called a reserve auction. And a reserve auction is an auction in which the seller has the right, the absolute right to accept or reject the high bid price regardless of what it is. So you as a buyer could be the high bidder at the auction but not know whether you got the asset or not because it is subject to the seller's acceptance after the auction. So many times you'll have a bid situation where there's a high bid, and then 2 or 3 days later the seller may come and decide that they want to counter that high bid. Quite frankly, it is the path of least resistance for a seller. It's easy for a seller to say, yeah, I'll do that. But quite frankly, in our experience, and in I think many of you who have been exposed to auctions will share with you, it doesn't generate the momentum, it doesn't generate the bid call, it doesn't generate the fever or the passion, and quite frankly, it doesn't generate the interest. Prior to being with Hanna Commercial, I worked for a developer, and we would not attend an auction that was a pure reserve auction. We had a bad experience with it. We were the high bidder, and we got countered, and why were we there? There was a room full of people. We were the market. We were the top of the market, and the seller was asking us to come in at a different number. We told him to pound salt. We ended up getting it for a lot less than our offer that we made at the auction down the road. But we vowed we wouldn't participate in all of the headache and the due diligence and the homework that needs to get done if we didn't know that we were going to get it if we were the high bidder. So on the other end of the spectrum, you have does anybody know what the other end of the spectrum is, just out of curiosity? Absolute auction. Absolute auction means what? It's gone, baby, that day. Is that you, Andy? Yes. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Absolute auction. It's gone. You hear it, it's the saying, a dime or a dollar. No matter what happens, that asset is going to be sold that day. A lot of risk for a seller, right? There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns, maybe not, a lot of perceived unknowns. But we will argue, and I will argue with anybody, that it generates the highest price every time, no matter what the situation, if the asset's been properly marketed. So if the asset's been properly exposed to all possible buyers, nobody likes a bargain better than the consumer or the buyer. So everybody will be, the reaction you get from the marketplace is, I got to stop what I'm doing, I got to come out and take a look at this asset, because if I'm the only bidder there, I might get it for a dime or a dollar. The problem with that is, from a buyer standpoint, is if you're thinking that as a buyer, who else is thinking that? Everybody. So when you have everybody, you've now uncovered the entire marketplace. It is the equivalent, the asset will sell if properly marketed for market value. Why? Because you've uncovered the entire pool of potential bidders. Probably some people who didn't know they were bidders will also stop what they're doing and come look at it just because of the appearance of a bargain or the perception that they may get it at a bargain. And so as a seller, you can be assured that everybody will come and do their due diligence and appear at the auction with their check in hand because they may get a bargain. It also forces that highest bidder, the person that you don't know in the market, to go higher and higher and higher. It forces them, because you've captured all the opinions of value, you've captured all of the market interest, those low bidders as well as the mid-level bidders, and whoever might be out in that audience, the high bidder, it forces them to go as high as they could possibly go and usually higher. What are some, any questions on that? Absolute. In between, it's not recognized statutorily, but it's recognized in the auction world. There's a mix somewhere in between. It's called a published reserve auction. Published reserve is where the seller states the price at which the asset becomes an absolute sale. It is a minimum bid at which the property will be sold if bidding reaches or exceeds that figure. And that's a great alternative for folks when there's maybe some mortgage or some liens on the property, or if there's partnership interests where they need to come to a situation where they can only market the property at a certain price. That price that's set, in our experience, typically has to be a price that is set so low that it achieves the same psychological result as an absolute sale. So if there's an asset out there, and we're not talking just it's not the price at which the seller would be agreeable to sell if they had to on their worst day. It's the price at which the seller would be sick if they had to sell it at that price. And arguably, we talk about this all the time, arguably a buyer will take 10 of them all day long if they could get it at that price. So it has to have that same effect of, I got to stop what I'm doing, because if I'm the only bidder at that auction at that price, I want to be able to get that asset, and I'll take as many as you got. So it does provide somewhat of a floor, somewhat of I don't want to call it a comfort level because it's usually an uncomfortable number, but it's a number that still achieves all those. We want to still capture all those bidders. It's widely used, and many times it's used in commercial sales. What are some reasons for a sale? Anybody have any ideas of what are some logical, where you don't look at asset type, you look at asset situation. So what are some situations that might warrant an auction sale? You mentioned it, court sales, 363, bankruptcy, receivership, foreclosure, separation, breakup, divorce, right? All those are court type sales. What other type? Estate planning, liquidation, conversion of an asset to cash so that the partners can go to Florida and retire, right? What else? Overstock, sure. Yep. What else?
But anytime a seller becomes more time sensitive than price sensitive, and that could be many.
I love hearing you. I love hearing you talk. You could give this better than I can, certainly. So time sensitivity, where someone is more sensitive to the time. They need to have it sold for whatever reason by a date certain, rather than by getting a certain price. So there are many occasions, and I think we see that in all categories of assets and in all situations where someone they just want it gone. They bought another property. They need the cash to put into another property. They have an opportunity elsewhere to make an investment, and they want that capital right away so that they can deploy it then right away. What else? Yep.
We disposed one with you that the lender, the borrower was in default. The property was underwater, and I was surprised the lender agreed to the auction to settle it for some minimum bid.
You come up with a great point, that there was a lender workout that actually involved a lender having a very significant involvement in the disposition or the way it was disposed. We talk a little bit about auction strategy, and I'll summarize auction strategy by saying simply that there is no limit to the type of strategy that can be employed in an auction environment. So I think people often just categorize an auction as a very simple process that everybody comes in a room and you don't know what exactly is going to happen. All you know is that the high bidder is going to get the asset. There are, and we as professionals and lawyers and real estate professionals create new strategies all the time. From our standpoint, I love hearing more about the situation so that we can craft a program that achieves the result of our seller client or lender client or receiver client, that isn't just quite a simple sale. We're having a situation now where we're now going into the third round of an auction over a period of, how long, Mike, a year and a half, 2 years? It's a multi-round sale because there's so many lawyers, so many secured creditors, bond assessments, tax liens on the property, that it has to go through a very creative process to peel away each of the complexities of the sale. And so as long as there is a situation presented, there is a strategy that can be employed. There is no one vanilla, auction box. What are some of the advantages, other than, I know we talked about time sensitivity. What do you think some of the advantages might be to get it sold? Getting an assets, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, it's a nice clean deal because you're selling it with no contingencies, as is whereas, with a pretty quick closing. It's all sellers love that.
So you're talking about most sales are quick closing, 30, 45 days, non-contingent, big earnest money deposits put down. Yep. We control the contract. Our seller client, our client controls the contract. Yep.
Mark, when I was talking about the receiverships and that there is now a statutorily prescribed way to clear the liens, how do you deal with that issue in an auction where there isn't any statutorily prescribed mechanism or other thing where the liens disappear when the property's sold? So someone's going to buy a property that may be significantly or fully encumbered.
I love it when there's no statutorily prescribed solution because that gives us what? It gives us deference and flexibility to create our own strategy. But what do you do? I think the new law is great to that point. It allows the receiver the flexibility to create a strategy that disposes of the physical real estate asset, converts those assets to cash assets that then fall under the court's supervision for distribution among creditors. So you are able, and I think it's no different than selling the asset itself and paying lien holders. What it does is it really accelerates the process, and it really takes the handcuffs off of the receiver, the lenders, and then many times it helps out the borrower too, because it creates a competitive environment for an asset that may not have had a competitive environment in its universe ever.
So are most of the auctions that you do actually conducted within a receivership setting?
I wouldn't say most of them get done in a receivership setting. I think we've had auctions that have had strategy within court setting, within 363 sale setting, within receiver. We've been appointed simply to market a foreclosure sale where we weren't the agent selling it, and we weren't the receiver, and we weren't an agent to the receiver because there wasn't any. We've been involved where the lender simply hired us to market the sheriff's sale date and to have private open houses because the court allowed us to do so. So there's, again, it goes to the point of as creative as the strategy as you can think of, it can be accomplished. We have many private sellers. That's just their chosen methodology of selling an asset. They don't want to deal with real estate brokers on the buyer side. They don't want to deal with lawyers on tearing up their contract, and they don't want to deal with the buyers retrading the deal and having long due diligence periods. They just want the asset sold And whatever they don't want to set a price out to the marketplace. They want to let the market sell price. So as many strategies as you could think of. We have many private sellers. We work a lot with the auction, with the other agents. We work with other real estate agents who maybe have a stale asset. They've been listing it for a couple years and they want it. Their client finally wants it to move. I know we have more to talk about in different types of sales, but yeah, go ahead, Steve.
So you just hit on it. So, property owner X has a property. He's got patient. Time is not an issue. He approaches you. You wear different hats. You got the auction side, you got the sales side, and he wants to use you or company X, one of the others around Cleveland here. How do you pitch the person to say, we want to represent you, and the auction side is the way to go, or the sales side is the way to go?
It takes a lot of listening as to what their goal is. We talked about situation. First question is always, what's the situation? Why are you here? Second question is going to be, tell me more about the asset itself. Tell me what kind of action. Has it been marketed in the past? Has it not been marketed in the past? What are your goals? What do you want to see happen at the end of the day? And what are the impediments to being sold? What have been the hiccups in the past? So a lot of that's how we oftentimes will get to the point of, boy, you might consider an auction as a viable alternative to get this asset sold for the highest possible price. It may not be the option to sit on the market for a period of time. We can do it because in our, as Hanna Commercial, we can do it, but so can this one, and this one. You want to go to an auction strategy, we believe we have a creative methodology and a successful platform to get that asset sold for the highest possible price. And a big component we always talk about is passing the brokerage fee on to the buyer. Huge advantage. In a regular real estate transaction, asset is sold, brokerage commission comes out of the purchase price, and so if it's $1 million, you're not getting $1 million, you're getting $980,000 or $930,000. If an asset is sold at auction at $1 million, you're getting a 10% buyer's premium added to that, so the high bid price is typically something more than the purchase price, or more than the high bid price. So, yeah, go ahead.
One thing that I found interesting, this is to do more with residential properties, but actually lately I had two of my clients that sold their house through auction because the property was worth a lot, the properties were worth a lot, but they were older. And the thing that attracted them was the ability not to have to deal with contingencies.
It's the biggest thing. Houses are a great auction candidate. Why? Because everybody's emotional about houses. I mean, my wife, I've done now with my partners hundreds of auctions over the last 9 or 10 years, and many before that in my other capacities. My wife wanted to go to a house auction, and I was scared to death to go to this house auction with her because I knew she was going there to buy. And thankfully, my partner went with her and kept her hand down past a certain point, and then that's why I'm still able to pay the bills these days. But thank you again for the questions. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Rob and Ron, as well.